The cold metal of the door handle stung my palm as I twisted it, expecting it to open the way it always had for the last 32 years. But it didn't. Instead, it resisted, unyielding, foreign, wrong. Hey everyone, before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss stories like this. Now, let's start today's story. I frowned, twisting harder, convinced the sudden chill of the afternoon had simply stiffened the mechanism. But the door didn't budge. My own house, my home, refused to let me in. A flicker of confusion tightened my chest. I had my house keys. I had walked out 10 minutes earlier to collect the mail, the same routine I'd had for decades. The porch steps creaked under my feet like they always did, the breeze carried the scent of jasmine from my garden like it always had, nothing felt out of place. Until now. I pulled my key from my pocket, leaning closer to the lock. That's when I saw it, tiny scratches glinting sharply under the afternoon sun. Thin, fresh lines carved around the keyhole, marking an intrusion, a change. The lock had been replaced. Not jammed. Not stuck. Replaced. My breath hitched. Only 2 people had keys to this house, me and my daughter. And I certainly hadn't changed anything in the past 10 minutes. A slow, heavy realization crawled up my spine, tightening its grip with every second that passed. I knocked on the door. Once. Twice. A third time. Each knock louder than the last, echoing across the quiet neighborhood like a warning. "Lily!" I shouted. "Open the door." For a moment, everything remained still. Then, faintly, I heard footsteps inside, hesitant ones, as though she was deciding whether or not to answer. A shadow moved past the living room window. She was there. She heard me. She was choosing to ignore me. Finally, the door cracked open just wide enough for half of her face to appear. Her expression was blank, no surprise, no guilt, no warmth. Just inconvenience. "What are you doing back early?" she asked, her voice flat. Back early? From what? It was my home. I wasn't a visitor. I wasn't a guest who needed an invitation. "I went out for 10 minutes, I said slowly, searching her face. "Why did you change the locks?" She shrugged, as if the answer were obvious, as though replacing a lock behind my back was normal. "Because you're forgetful." It was time. Forgetful. The word stung deeper than the cold doorknob had. Yes, I was 68. Yes, I occasionally misplaced my reading glasses or walked into a room without remembering why. But I still paid my bills on time, managed my own appointments, cooked my own meals, and lived alone without ever needing help. I wasn't forgetful. But as I looked at her, really looked at her, I realized she wasn't saying it because she believed it. She wanted me to believe it. I stepped inside, expecting her to move aside. But she didn't. She stood firm, forcing me to squeeze past her shoulder like an unwanted visitor intruding on her space. Inside, the house felt immediately wrong. Boxes, my boxes, were stacked along the hallway, taped shut and labeled in her sharp handwriting. Old clothes, unnecessary items, mom's things, to sell/donate. My stomach twisted. "What is all this?" "I'm reorganizing," she said without looking up from her phone. "You have too much clutter." Clutter. I scanned the boxes, recognizing items I hadn't touched in years mixed with ones I used daily. Memories, keepsakes, sentimental pieces, everything lumped together as clutter in her eyes. I moved past the boxes toward the living room, my pulse quickening, and then I froze. My wedding portrait, the one that had hung above the fireplace since the day we moved in, was gone. The blue and gold vase I brought back from Bali, gone. The rocking chair my mother left me before she passed, gone. Even the cream-patterned rug I'd had for over 2 decades was rolled up and leaning against the wall as though it were trash waiting for collection. My throat tightened painfully. "Where is everything?" "I'm making the house modern," she said. "Clean. Minimal. It'll be easier to sell later." Sell. The word hit me like a fist to the chest. I turned slowly toward her. Sell. Sell what? She finally lifted her gaze, and in her eyes I saw something sharp, an edge I hadn't noticed before. "The house. This one." The air in my lungs evaporated. "This house is in my name, Lily." She smirked slightly. "For now." 2 words. 2 arrogant, calculated words. "For now." Something inside me cracked. I stared at her, my daughter, my only child, the girl whose scraped knees I had kissed, whose nightmares I had soothed, whose future I had sacrificed so much for, and I didn't recognize her at all. Her eyes were cold. Impatient. Almost annoyed that I dared to question her. That night, after she retreated upstairs without another word, I lay awake replaying everything she had done over the past months. Every dismissive comment. Every accidental, undermining joke about my age. Every time she insisted on handling my mail, claiming she didn't want me to stress. Every conversation about retirement homes she brought up with suspicious frequency. Every time she inserted herself into my appointments, my documents, my finances. I had brushed it all off. She was my daughter. My Lily. Strong-willed, yes. Opinionated, yes. Sometimes careless with her tone, but never malicious. At least, that's what I had always told myself. But in the silence of the night, with the memory of her cold expression still etched into my mind, the truth settled into my bones like ice. She was pushing me out. Bit by bit. Step by step. Decision by decision. She wanted control. She wanted the house. She wanted my life rearranged to fit her plans. And the worst part? She thought I wouldn't notice. She thought I wouldn't fight. She thought I was too weak, too old, too naive to stand against her. But she made one mistake. She underestimated me. She thought changing the locks would scare me. She thought boxing my things would break me. She thought speaking to me like I was fragile would weaken me. But all she did was awaken something I hadn't felt in years. Determination. Strength. Fire. She had pushed me too far. And I wasn't going to let her steal my life. Or my house. Not now. Not ever. For the next few days, I did something I never imagined I would have to do inside my own home. I pretended to be small, quiet, fragile, confused. Exactly the way she wanted me to be. I let my shoulders slump, let my voice soften, let my steps drag, as if I were tired or overwhelmed. I let her believe she was winning. I watched her walk through the house like she owned every inch of it, giving instructions she had no right to give. Don't leave dishes in the sink, Mom. I'll handle it. You shouldn't be moving heavy things. Just stay in your room. Why don't you go rest? You look tired. Rest. Tired. Forgetful. She laced those words into every conversation, planting them like weeds she hoped would choke out my confidence. She moved my things into smaller spaces, rearranged furniture without asking, took down decorations I loved, and made choices as if I were invisible. All the while, she believed I was shrinking. She believed I was surrendering. But she didn't notice the way I watched her from the corners of rooms. The way I memorized her routines. The way I listened to every phone call she made behind closed doors. She mistook my silence for weakness, not realizing it was calculation. Then one afternoon, when she left to run errands, the errands that had grown suspiciously frequent, I walked through the hallway with a steady pulse and opened her bedroom door. It wasn't locked. That alone told me everything. Inside, her room was spotless, unnaturally organized. Not a single item was out of place. But on the far side of the room, her desk sat neatly arranged with several stacks of papers clipped together. I approached slowly, already feeling a knot twist inside my stomach. The first stack held printed contracts. The next contained property documents with my address stamped at the top. Then spreadsheets with titles in bold. Projected value after renovation. Agent contacts. Sale timeline, estimate. My breath caught. And then I saw it. A folder slightly thicker than the rest, the top page titled, Authorization for Property Management, Pending Signature. My name was printed beneath it in bold, unmistakable letters. But the space for my signature was blank. My pulse quickened as I lifted the page, and froze. Underneath it was a thin sheet of tracing paper, worn at the edges, covered in practice strokes. My signature, repeated over and over with eerie accuracy. My full legal signature, traced until perfected. My own daughter had been practicing forging my name. Preparing to sign documents behind my back. Preparing to legally take my home away from me. The room tilted slightly. I sat in her desk chair, gripping the edges to steady myself as betrayal settled inside me like a shard of glass. I had raised her alone. I had held her hand through scraped knees and heartbreaks. I had worked double shifts so she could attend the university she dreamed of. I had paid off debts she never knew about. I had sacrificed sleep, health, money, pieces of myself I never got back. And she wanted to repay me by taking the only thing I had left. My house. My safety. My life. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to ask her why why the child I loved more than anything saw me as an obstacle instead of a mother. But I did none of those things. Instead, something steadier, colder, stronger settled inside my chest. Resolve. I picked up the papers again and read deeper, this time with clarity instead of shock. She wasn't planning to wait until I grew sicker or older. No, she wanted me gone now. She had contacted a real estate agent, booked appointments with contractors, even sketched out plans for renovations. One document listed expenses for a remodeled kitchen. Another mapped out a new living room layout, one without my rocking chair, without my portrait wall, without anything that belonged to me. Then I saw her phone, still open on her desk, the screen showing a drafted message to her friends. Finally moving into the house soon. Mom won't be staying here much longer. My vision blurred for a moment. I had to blink several times before the words stopped swimming. She wasn't just planning to take my house. She was planning to erase me from it. Erase my memories. Erase my presence. Erase 32 years of my life. My fingers trembled, but the tremor wasn't from fear, it was from a rising, burning determination that I hadn't felt in years. She wanted my house. She wanted to push me out. She wanted me to disappear from the life I built. Fine. She would get her wish. But not in the way she expected. I replaced everything carefully, placing every page exactly where it had been, making sure not even a corner looked disturbed. I smoothed the sheets. Straightened the stacks. Adjusted the chair. Then I returned to my room, closing the door behind me with quiet finality. I sat on my bed, hands folded in my lap, staring at the wall as the weight of my next decision settled over me. I had two choices. Be the weak woman she thought I was. Or be the mother who had survived far worse than this. My choice was clear. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I didn't tremble. I didn't hesitate. When he answered, I spoke with a clarity I hadn't used in years. I want to sell my house, I said. He asked if I was sure. Yes, I replied. Absolutely. And I was. It wasn't a decision made out of anger, though anger simmered beneath my ribs. It wasn't revenge, even though betrayal tasted bitter in my mouth. It was self-preservation. It was reclaiming my life before she could dismantle it piece by piece. My daughter had already made her decision. She wanted me gone. So I would go. But not quietly. Not empty-handed. Not broken or manipulated. I would sell the house she had been planning to steal right out from under me. I would take every penny she had hoped to inherit prematurely. And I would leave her with nothing but the lesson she had earned. That a mother's love may be deep, but her strength runs deeper. Because if my own daughter wanted to push me out of my life, then I would leave on my own terms. And build a new life without her. The real estate agent, a sharp-eyed woman named Marin, arrived on a Thursday morning. I had asked her, very specifically, to park 2 blocks away and knock quietly. My daughter had grown suspicious lately, and the last thing I needed was her noticing an unfamiliar car idling in front of the house. When Marin stepped inside, I closed the door quickly behind her. She paused, taking in the house with a long, practiced sweep of her gaze. Her eyes flicked over the hardwood floors, the wide windows, the long hallway that led to the living room. This is a valuable property, she said finally, her voice calm but impressed. And in this market, you'll have buyers fighting over it. I exhaled slowly. Exactly what I needed. We sat at the dining table, one of the few things my daughter hadn't moved, though she had complained about how dated it looked, and Marin set her folder down. She organized the papers into neat stacks, her professionalism almost soothing. As she explained each document, each clause, each step of the selling process, she looked at me, not through me, not past me, not down at me. She spoke respectfully, clearly, and without a single hint of condescension. A stranger treated me with more dignity in 30 minutes than my own daughter had in the past year. Page by page, signature by signature, the plan unfolded exactly as I had imagined. Quietly. Privately. Discreetly. By the time we finished, the house was officially listed. No sign in the yard. No public announcement. The listing was sent to private buyers, people who had already been searching, people who wouldn't hesitate. And they didn't. Within hours, offers poured in, far faster than I expected. By evening, Marin texted me with 5 serious buyers, each one eager to finalize the deal before the weekend. By the next morning, after reviewing everything carefully, I accepted an offer far above market value. Enough to secure my future for years. Enough to walk away with strength, not fear. Just like that. The house was no longer mine. And it certainly wasn't my daughter's. The next part of my plan was simple. I waited. I waited until she came home that evening, slamming the front door behind her the way she always did. She stormed into the living room, kicking off her shoes and tossing her bag onto the couch as if it belonged to her. She started complaining immediately, about traffic, about her boss, about the weather, about every tiny inconvenience she had ever experienced. Not once did she ask about my day. Not once did she look at me with anything resembling kindness. And then she noticed me sitting in the living room, calmly sipping a cup of tea. I rarely sat there anymore. She had made the space feel like hers, not mine. Her steps slowed. Her expression tightened. "What?" she said sharply. "Nothing," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Just enjoying the house." She narrowed her eyes at me. "You're acting weird. You have no idea," I thought. For 2 days, life went on as if nothing had changed. She barked orders, rolled her eyes at everything I did, criticized the smallest habits. She lived in the house like she owned every inch of it. Meanwhile, I woke up each morning knowing it was no longer hers to covet. Every hour brought me closer to the closing date, which finally arrived on Monday. The buyer, the lawyer, and Marin handled everything electronically. I sat at the dining table again, the same place where we had signed the listing papers, and watched as the final documents appeared on my screen. Click. Click. Signature. Signature. By noon, the final transfer confirmation pinged into my email. The funds appeared in my account, clean, immediate, indisputable. By 12:01, I had sold the house my daughter had been trying to steal. And by 12:10, she walked into the room. She froze the instant she saw my laptop open to the lawyer's email. Her eyes widened. "What is this?" I turned the screen toward her. "Confirmation," I said. "The sale went through." Her mouth dropped open. "Sale? What sale?" "The house," I said simply. "I sold it." She stared at me like I had spoken in another language. "What do you mean you sold it? You can't sell my—" She stopped. Because she heard herself. She said it out loud. "My." Her face went ghost white as the truth slammed into her. Her breathing quickened, hands curling into fists. You wouldn't," she stuttered. "You couldn't. Mom, tell me this is a joke." "No joke," I said. "I sold the house." She stumbled backward into a chair, collapsing into it with a thud. She looked genuinely shaken, as if the world had shifted under her feet. "Why would you do that?" she whispered. "Why would you sell the place knowing I was planning to take it?" I finished for her. She swallowed loudly, her jaw clenched tight. "This is insane," she said. "You can't just ruin everything like this. Ruin everything." For a moment, I wondered if she truly believed that my home, my life, my memories existed solely for her future comfort. I stood up slowly, the weight I had carried for months lifting from my shoulders. "Lily," I said quietly, "I didn't ruin anything." I walked toward the doorway, pausing long enough to look at her one last time. Her eyes were filled with disbelief, anger, and something else, fear. "You ruined it yourself." I left the room, my step steady, my heart calm. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. She didn't take the news gracefully. In fact, she erupted with a fury I had not seen since she was a teenager slamming doors over curfew. "This is my future," she screamed, her voice cracking. "I already planned everything. You can't just walk away with the money." Her words echoed through the house, my house, though technically not anymore. The walls absorbed her anger, but I didn't. I simply stood there, steady, calm, unshaken. I said softly. And I did. Her face contorted, twisting into something almost unrecognizable. Her eyes filled with tears, hot, sharp, selfish tears. Not sorrow. Not regret. Not even hurt. Rage. She wasn't crying for me. She wasn't crying for us as a family. She was crying for the future she believed she could take without consequence. "You're being dramatic," she spat, wiping her cheeks aggressively. "I wasn't going to push you out. You're imagining things. This is all in your head." I looked at her calmly, refusing to rise to her bait. "You changed the locks." "That was for safety," she shot back. "You boxed all my belongings." "I was organizing," she insisted, her voice climbing higher. You forged my signature. That stopped her. Completely. The fight drained from her face like water running off a broken glass. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her hands, which had been flailing a moment earlier, dropped to her sides. You went through my things, she whispered. I met her eyes, really met them, for the first time in a long time. You went through my life, I replied. She blinked slowly, her mind racing. I could almost see the gears turning as she tried to form some excuse, some justification, some lie she could cling to. Her mouth opened, then closed again. For a brief second, just one, I thought she might apologize. I even saw something flicker in her gaze, something almost like remorse. But it vanished. Instead, she straightened her back, lifted her chin, and sneered. You're old, she said coldly. You don't know what you're talking about. Ah. There it was. Her armor. Her shield. Her cruelest weapon. I nodded slowly, not shocked, not hurt, just confirmed. The new owners will be here next week, I said. We have 5 days to pack. We, she repeated, her eyebrows shooting up. As if I had spoken in another language. Yes, I said. We. Both of us. This is not my house anymore. She let out a laugh, a sharp, bitter, disbelieving sound. You think I'm leaving? I'll tell them you scammed them. I'll ruin the sale. I'll tell them you're unstable. No, I said firmly, cutting her off for the first time in months. You won't. She froze. I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. Thick. Heavy. Unmistakable. I placed it on the table between us. Inside were photographs, crystal clear, time-stamped, of every single piece of paper she had forged. Her neat practice lines. Her attempts to mimic my signature. Her planning documents. Everything she thought she had hidden. Her eyes flicked to the envelope, and immediately her posture shifted. Her confidence cracked. What is that? She asked, though she already knew. Proof, I said. Proof of what you were planning. Her face drained of color so fast it was almost frightening. If you try anything, I continued softly, I will protect myself. Legally. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The quiet truth hit her harder than any screaming match ever could. For the first time, she looked afraid. Real fear. Not fear of me, but fear of losing control. Fear of consequences. Fear of the world seeing what she had become. She pointed a trembling finger at me. You're choosing strangers over your own daughter. No, I said, shaking my head gently. I'm choosing myself. That broke her. The anger returned, wave after wave, but this time it was directionless. Weak. Desperate. She slammed her fists against the table, screamed into the air, paced in frantic circles. She looked like a child throwing a tantrum, not a grown woman. But I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I didn't apologize. I simply watched her with a quiet sadness, not for her actions, but for the person she had allowed herself to become. Eventually, she stormed down the hallway, her footsteps shaking the floorboards. She slammed her bedroom door so violently that the picture frames rattled. But I didn't react. I stood in the silence she left behind, feeling something unfamiliar bloom inside my chest. Relief. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe without someone standing over me. For the first time, the house felt quiet in a peaceful way, not an oppressive, suffocating one. For the first time, I wasn't being belittled in my own home or tiptoeing around someone who saw me as a stepping stone. For the first time, I saw clearly. My daughter wasn't the person I had raised. The compassion I had poured into her had not grown roots. She had chosen entitlement over kindness. Control over respect. Power over love. Selling the house wasn't revenge. It was escape. It was protection. It was freedom. And as the days passed and moving boxes piled up, she grew quieter. Angrier, yes, but quieter. The silence was bitter, heavy, resentful. But it was silence. She knew the battle was over. She had lost. And I had finally reclaimed my life. Chapter 5. Moving day arrived faster than I expected. Time has a strange way of speeding up when you're finally ready to let go. One moment I was packing boxes in quiet disbelief, and the next, the movers were carrying the last of my things through the doorway I had crossed 1,000 times before. The sun was bright, almost too bright, as if the world was celebrating a freedom I hadn't yet fully stepped into. The new owners arrived right on time. A young couple, barely in their 30s, hands intertwined, eyes wide with excitement. They walked across the lawn together, smiling kindly as they approached. The woman introduced herself first, her voice warm and genuine. The man followed with a polite nod and a shy grin. They treated me not as a burden, not as someone to dismiss, but as a person who mattered, as someone worthy of respect. I had forgotten what that felt like. They walked through the house with reverence, touching the walls gently, admiring the sunlight in the living room, talking about where the crib would go one day. A future filled with gratitude and hope, so starkly different from the energy that had poisoned these rooms for far too long. I wished them well, and I meant it. My daughter, on the other hand, stood as far from them as possible, arms crossed tightly, lips pressed thin, face twisted with resentment. She refused to greet them, refused to smile, refused to acknowledge the reality she had tried so desperately to control. She wasn't mourning the home. She was mourning the future she had imagined, one where she had ownership, control, dominance, all extracted from me. When the last box was finally loaded into the car, she broke her stubborn silence. "So what now?" she spat. "Where are you going to stay? A nursing home?" There it was, the cruelty she wielded so effortlessly, sharp enough to cut without hesitation. But this time, I didn't bleed. I smiled softly, calmly. No. What she didn't know, what she had never thought to ask, was that I already had a plan. I had used a portion of the sale to buy a small cottage 2 towns away. Cozy, bright, peaceful. A place with white curtains and a stone path leading to a little garden. A place quiet enough to hear my own thoughts. A place where no one would belittle me for living in my own home. "It's time for me to start fresh," I told her. She scoffed loudly. "Without me? Seriously? I'm afraid so." My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I had never been more certain. She stared at me as if I had slapped her. "You're really just leaving me?" "You left me first," I said gently. "You just didn't bother moving out." Her bravado cracked, just slightly. I saw something flicker in her expression. Panic? Hurt? Or maybe the faintest echo of the child she once was, the little girl who used to cling to my hand and tell me she loved me more than the moon. For one fragile second, she softened. Her mouth quivered. Her brows drew together. And I thought, just for a heartbeat, that she might apologize. That she might say she didn't mean it. That she might admit she had been wrong. But the moment disappeared as quickly as it came. She straightened her back, the entitlement returning like armor snapping into place. "You'll regret this," she hissed. I shook my head slowly. "No, sweetheart. I already regret staying as long as I did." Her face hardened, but she didn't respond. She didn't reach for me. She didn't try to stop me. She didn't even follow as I walked to the car. I opened the door, took one final look at the house, not because I longed for it, but because I needed to acknowledge the life I was leaving behind. A life of walking on eggshells. A life of being spoken over, dismissed, used. A life of slowly disappearing inside my own home. Then I closed the door. She didn't call after me. And I didn't look back. The road stretched open in front of me, golden light filtering through the trees as if the world had been waiting to welcome me. My grip on the steering wheel loosened. My shoulders relaxed. Each mile between us felt like a breath I hadn't been able to inhale for years. By the time I reached the cottage, the sky was shifting into soft hues of orange and rose. I stepped out of the car and felt something warm settle in my chest, a feeling so unfamiliar, it almost startled me. Peace. The cottage was small, yes, but it felt more like home in 3 seconds than the house had felt in 3 years. I opened the door to the faint scent of fresh paint and new beginnings. Light danced through the windows. The rooms hummed with quiet. Freedom has a sound, I realized. It's silence without tension. It's space without fear. I unpacked slowly, savoring the act. I placed my teacups where I wanted them. Arranged my books in a way that made sense to me. Hung my coat by the door without worrying someone would complain it looked messy. Every small choice felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. When I finally made tea and settled near the window, the hills glowed beneath the setting sun. Leaves rustled softly in the wind. A bird landed on the fence, chirping as if greeting the new tenant. And somewhere deep inside, something healed. I realized something important as I watched the sky darken into twilight. Family is not defined by blood. Family is defined by love, by respect, by kindness. My daughter had abandoned all three long before I ever considered selling the house. Selling the house wasn't revenge. It was survival. It was freedom. It was the first chapter of a life I didn't know I was allowed to want. In this new beginning, I wasn't a victim. I wasn't someone's possession. I wasn't a fragile old woman clinging to a home where she wasn't wanted. I was a woman who had finally, after years of being diminished, chosen herself. And for the first time in a long, long time, that choice felt like enough. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories like this. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.